Stop the world!
Welcome to Stop the World. I'm Olivia Nelson.
And I'm David Rowe. Let me say welcome back, Liv.
Thanks, Dave.
The wedding was an absolute blast.
Yes.
I had a great time.
You
and
did.
you are now the proud wife of Ben.
That's true.
He's a good man.
You rocked that dance floor, so
Thank you.
fond memories
I got a
for
few
you, Dave.
compliments.
But in other serious news, today's guest for the podcast is a lifelong champion of democracy and critic of authoritarianism. He's none other than Marko Mihkelson, a six-term member of Estonia's parliament and chair of its Committee for Foreign Affairs. Marko is a Russia expert, a fierce critic of Vladimir Putin, and a steadfast advocate for maximum global support for Ukraine.
He sure is. We had Marko visit ASPI this week. Liv when he was in Canberra, meeting with Australian government officials and foreign embassies, some of whom joined us for a roundtable yesterday. He's a really powerful figure in European strategic policy debate. One of his arguments is that Russia is imperialistic by its nature as a country, and that this goes beyond Putin's 25-year reign. He also argues that, therefore, Russia needs to be soundly defeated and driven out of Ukraine such that it can't pose a threat again. And that means that some kind of negotiated settlement involving compromises, which is currently being pursued, isn't an option.
Marko's native Estonia is a country of just 1.3 million people, but it is playing its strategic cards smartly. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, it adopted a policy of never alone again, which meant seeking NATO and EU membership immediately, and this has remained a bipartisan position ever since. And having suffered Russian cyber attacks in the 2000s, it's also built up its tech capabilities to world-class levels.
Yeah, Marko talks about all this and more. He explains why he feels democracy is on the back foot globally, the changing role of the United States as a bedrock of the global order, and the rise of authoritarianism around the world. Then we delve into Russia, Ukraine, Estonia, and Europe. And Marko shares his view on just what needs to happen if we're to pass this civilizational test of case of supporting Ukraine against Russia's invasion.
Marko is a major voice for democracy around the world, and we were grateful that he could make the time to visit ASPI. Let's hear from him.
Marko Mihkelson, welcome to Canberra. Thanks for coming on Stop the World.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start by talking about the nature of authoritarianism and democracy globally, what we're seeing, the trends that we're seeing at the moment. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about your native Estonia, the regional issues, obviously Russia and Ukraine being central there. Just give me your thoughts, though, on the balance right now that you're seeing around the world between democracy and authoritarianism. Which way is that moving and what are the key drivers?
This is absolutely the one of the most important questions for us, for politicians, for think tankers, diplomats to digest, and because that allows us to really focus what should be done. We are not doing well. We meaning democracies. The pressure on us posed by authoritarian regimes are unprecedented. Yes, this is nothing new. Competition, if I may use this kind of word, mild word, has been there for many decades. If you go back, for instance, times when communist Russia was established after the coup d'etat by Bolsheviks in 1917, they immediately declared that they would like to promote world revolution globally, not only in Europe, and that was kind of seen as a fight, not only ideological fight between communism and capitalism, if I may say so, but it was purely also the fight between authoritarianism, imperialism, and democracies. So ever since, basically, we have seen the topic there since World War I ended. A number of issues were unresolved, including also the peace and lasting peace in Europe, which led to traumatic events of 1930s in different countries, a rise of authoritarianism, and a serious challenge put on democracies. And during World War II, as we know, democracies had to make a kind of alliance with authoritarian country, Soviet Union, in order to beat another authoritarian regime in Europe and globally. And unfortunately, that one of those authoritarian regimes, like Russia, but partly also China, definitely after the World War II, were able to maintain quite significant power on a global level, meaning as members of P5, we have a veto right on security issues, and not only. So we actually have inherited this. Where are we right now from from the past, and unfortunately, we right now, while those roots of this kind of competition or even fight between democracies and authoritarian regimes are more and more tense right now, and not only in terms of we don't see them only in a hybrid or gray area, but also directly the full-scale war, what is going on already for many years in Europe, shows us that your democracies, a number of them have diminished significantly during last couple of decades, perhaps. We have to stick together, and we have to understand these challenges we have, and really tackle root causes of the current conflict between democracies and authoritarian regimes.
Mm-hmm. It's an awfully Putin-esque term, root causes, unfortunately. But I know you mean it in a very different way to the way that
absolutely.
that Moscow uses it.
Definitely deliberately used this.
So okay, why is it going badly for us, though, fundamentally? I mean, and perhaps to lead you a little bit down a particular direction, I mean, how much of it has to do with the limitations of the way that we're actually supporting each other? I mean, obviously, Ukraine is showing, to some extent, the limitations that other democracies have on supporting a democracy that is clearly the victim here of completely unjustified aggression. How much of it is to do with the fact that, we're worried about ourselves, about our own prospects, about our own economies, or perhaps that, democracy as a set of values to rally around is perhaps just not as strong, the perception of it globally is not as strong as it might have been, say, 20 or 15 or 20 years ago?
There are many reasons, of course. There is one reason behind of it is that we became too relaxed after the collapse of Soviet Union. And there were naive hopes that free trade will somehow affect also China, for instance, or some other authoritarian regimes, and liberal democracy is something what overwhelmed after the collapse of Soviet Union. And I think probably also there was a kind of, this was very much understandable probably in the western part of free world, that after decades of kind of Cold War and threats from Soviet Union, nuclear threat disappeared. So it was natural to kind of be laid back and to take out some peace dividends. Unfortunately, we went too far with disarming ourselves, hoping that conventional warfare is, at least in Europe, is in the past. And Russia has changed. Russia has, become difficult partner, but still we hope that one day will become more democratic and open society. And same perhaps applied to China after Deng Xiaoping decided to open up, and all those decisions made between Americans and Chinese in the 1970s. Nobody probably expected that China will grow in those rapid terms and will become power which has much more to say globally than somebody expected. And in this regard, now we see that China, Russia, but also North Korea, Iran, as axes, have actually agreed upon to use a momentum that specifically relatively high influence of China when it comes to economy, innovation, economic power in general, but also military might, has created kind of understanding that there is a chance to reshape a world order, which has been mostly not only after the World War II, but let's say during last couple of centuries, at least led by democratic European nations. And that is the world we live right now. We have to understand that this world is in the middle of serious transformation, and European nations, if we, European meaning democratic nations, if we are not going to able to stick together right now, then we are not being able to set or define norms or rules for a world which is going to emerge anyway after this struggle between democracies and authoritarian regimes.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me US leadership is another obvious big factor in this. I mean, the US has shifted in its actual sort of homegrown attitudes, it seems, towards being the force behind that liberal international order. I mean, America First really does mean something quite authentic and genuine, and it does. The US decision to kind of shift and put its own priorities ahead of, I guess, supporting an international order at some expense to itself is a significant factor. I mean, I'm a staunch US alliance supporter. I know you're a staunch transatlanticist, but how has the US shift, I suppose, changed your views about, that transatlantic relationship and the US in general?
Yeah, definitely. What we have seen during last perhaps 5 to 10 years, there has been a gradual shift, and again, this is influenced. What's happening on a global stage, how to handle the growth of China. This is first time, for many decades where the United States has actually the power which can really challenge their leading position on a global level. And plus, of course, we should not forget that societies are changing. Demography is one factor, but also what has happened during last, let's say, 15 to 20 years, how we as democracies or open societies communicate within our societies, and how vulnerable we are actually from interference from outside. I'm, as a former journalist, I know you are also. I was editor-in-chief of biggest news daily in Estonia at the end of 90s, when nobody knew about social media, and the internet was very much in early stages for newspapers like ours, and there weren't so many bubbles, let's say. It was much more easier in democratic societies to rally for more unified cause, and political, let's say, landscape was more center-oriented rather than we see what's happening today. And polarization is not the question only what we see in the United States. Unfortunately, the very same tendencies we see in Europe, in our democracies around the world. And they are fueled also by those who would like to see us being more polarized and weaker in order to maintain this stronger national unity when it comes specifically to the questions of foreign policy, strategic decision making.
Yeah. Okay. No, those are important points. I want to move on to Russia and the Baltics and Ukraine. I mean, Estonia is obviously right there on the front line alongside Ukraine in terms of Russian aggression. I've heard you say in other forums, I was listening to the Why We Fight podcast that you were on earlier this year, really excellent podcast, and I recommend it to our listeners if they're not already fans of it. But I mean, one of the points that you made in that is that that imperialism is sort of built into the Russian nation. It's not just a Vladimir Putin issue. And that obviously indicates that we can't just wait for Putin to die or be overthrown. It's a pretty sort of depressing prospect, I guess, from the point of view of, say, Australia, where we're a little bit less familiar with having a neighbour that is that way inclined. I mean, obviously we are somewhat preoccupied by China and the rise of China here in the Indo-Pacific, but certainly, as sharing a land border with a nation like Russia that has, as you put it, been an imperialist for so many generations that it is sort of almost sort of culturally built in. What to explain that to me? I mean, where does that actually reside? It's sort of hard to imagine from an Australian perspective that it's in the hearts of the Russian people. I mean, we like to think of human beings as human beings, and we're more or less the same everywhere, but perhaps it is ingrained in the culture, in the education system, in various other ways. Just for an Australian listener, explain how that works.
Oh yeah, this is critically important to understand why Russia is acting like they do and why they are so aggressive, and not only against neighbours, but also why are they so aggressive against democracies around the world. As I explained earlier, that what happened with Russia, of course, you have to understand that Russian imperial history goes back several centuries, ever since they decided to create their own statehood. One of the main ideas was to expand and also at the same time to keep very strong authoritarian or even totalitarian rule of a one person as a Tsar, emperor, or general secretary of Communist Party, or now the president of that country, and that has been the case for so many centuries. And if we think back, the kind of experience what Russia or Russian people had with rule of law-based democratic systems, it's less than one generation, all in all. Perhaps the most positive time for Russia in that sense was at the beginning of 20th century, right before World War I. Then they were more or less forming themselves as a constitutional monarchy. But World War II destroyed that. Partly, of course, we Estonians are lucky that World War II ended with the collapse of empires in Europe, and partly also temporary collapse of Soviet Russian Empire allowed us to declare our independence on 24th of February 1918, and in independence war against Bolshevik Russia to win that war in 1920. But as we know, while World War I ended up with collapse of several empires in Europe, it didn't actually lead to a collapse of Russian Empire. They were very much ready and pushed back and yes, under a different name, Soviet Union. Sometimes people also from distance make a mistake thinking that Soviet Union was something else rather than Russian Empire. No, it was Russian Empire, under just painted into red and using this kind of ideological facade, meaning communism. During World War II, we talked about that as well. Russian Empire or Soviet Empire was one who actually initiated that war. They were together with Nazis in 1939. First ones who actually launched attack against Poland. First Nazis, and then a couple of weeks later, Soviets. They attacked Finland. They occupied and annexed illegally Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and so forth. Of course, then Nazis attacked Soviet Union in order to make sure that Stalin will not succeed in his own attack against Germany, because Stalin was ready to attack Germany early July 1941. We know now from those archive documents we have. Then obviously the alliance of against Nazi Germany appeared, and Soviet Union was able to come out from this war as a winner. And that obviously again didn't help much to change this mindset, because after the World War II, Germany went through denazification, very painful process, which in many ways lasted for decades. Soviets or Russian Empire obviously didn't face this reality. And this didn't happen even after the collapse of Soviet Union. Unfortunately, the main backbone of Russian Empire in modern terms, KGB, survived. And within a few years, they were able to capture full power in Russia, putting Putin as the president, and destroying within a few years all the elements of democratic institutions which were established early 90s. And today we can say that Russian Empire is fully back and trying to expand again into territories which they think should belong to them, like Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, and others. But not only that, they are seeking to destroy entire Western alliance. And this is why people sometimes make mistakes thinking that this is only Putin's war. Definitely not. This is Russia's war. I was a journalist, worked in Moscow mid-90s, and I covered also Chechen War, 94 to 96, traveled many times to battlefields there. And then I made interview with General Dudaev, who was leader of Chechens in February 1995. Then he said that, if we fail in our fight for freedom against Russians, these imperial wars will last for next 50 years. And that was 1995. Nobody knew about Putin. Nobody knew about who ran Russia today. But now, 30 years later, nothing unfortunately has changed, and he was right in terms of telling that after Chechnya, Georgia, Ukraine, maybe others will be targets from Russian side. So it's to say out loud is that and using this Putin's definition of root causes of current war in Europe, the main root cause is a survival of Russian imperialism for such a long period of time, and their readiness to use all kind of tools, including conventional warfare, to enlarge, to set their kind of way of thinking and norms on borders, and this is why we have to understand that there will not be a just and lasting peace and stability, probably globally also, unless this mindset, Russian imperialism, will be defeated in their war of aggression in Ukraine.
Right, which practically, from the point of view of what actually needs to happen next, it means a complete defeat of Russia and a repudiation of Putin's, or you would say Russia's, sort of maximalist ambitions in Ukraine, correct?
First and foremost, their aggression against Ukraine cannot succeed or should not succeed, because if we want to establish or re-establish a just and lasting peace, and I argue a word, a just peace, because after World War II we had in Europe also peace, but my country, Estonia, was 50 years occupied by Soviet Union, Soviet Empire. That wasn't a pleasant time for us. And this is what we don't want to be repeated again in Europe. It's definitely, we should make sure that this impunity, what Russian imperialism has carried out for many decades, is going to end here and now. And their aggression should not go unpunished. And this is why we say and argue that we, democratic nations globally, who are actually helping a lot Ukrainians in their fight for freedom and independence, and we know that their fight is our fight as well, because this is first front line and the real front line between democracies and authoritarian regimes. Then obviously this help should be materialized in real strategic aim. Russia cannot succeed in their war of aggression in Ukraine, and Ukraine must restore its territorial integrity and win in this war.
I mean, nothing would please me more personally than to see Russian forces driven back over the border, out of Donbass, out of Sevastopol, out of Crimea. That said, I mean, the prevailing direction of things and the prevailing view seems to be that some sort of negotiated settlement is going to be needed. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment, which is to say that, yes, a just peace is what we are looking for, but unfortunately the world is not just. And right now, even Kyiv itself is looking for some kind of negotiation under which it might be able to tolerate a permanent peace settlement. I mean, I suppose, what do you say to the idea that if a settlement that Kyiv is happy with is achieved, that will be enough of a signal to Putin and to the Russians that they have failed, and that will be enough of a signal to the rest of the world that unprovoked aggression does not reward the aggressor?
No, I don't think so. I think that only Ukrainian flag over Sevastopol is something that really triggers different way of thinking in Moscow and in Russia. We have seen so many times ceasefires in Ukraine since Russia started the war against Ukraine in February 2014. Don't forget that Russia started to occupy and illegally annex territories of Ukraine in February 2014. And what happened in September 2014, February 2015, Minsk processes, after declaring ceasefires and so, they didn't actually lead to lasting peace, not to say a just peace. So it was only time for Russia to regroup, to see that how well Western nations are ready to help Ukraine, how solidly we back them up militarily and with other capabilities. And they miscalculated that they can run over Ukraine easily in February or springtime 2022. But as we've seen, so they have not changed their calculation or their objectives. They want to destroy entire statehood of Ukraine. Not only, this is not about fight about territory. This is much more. And because their second aim and much more important aim is to destroy a Western alliance, basically saying they want to destroy NATO. Because don't forget that their ultimatum, which was delivered in December 2021, was explicitly about NATO, not about Ukraine, that NATO should withdraw its military infrastructure from the countries who joined NATO after 1997. Of course, since 2022, we have seen Finland and Sweden joining NATO, which is actually part of a strategic defeat of Russia.
Absolutely.
If we think about situation in the northeast part of Europe. But again, I understand that Ukrainians have a certain limits, and I've been several times on front lines. I know how difficult the situation is there. And if you don't have enough support, obviously you try to balance the situation and probably reach out the denominator what can be agreed upon by supporters and allies and partners. And Ukrainians called for unconditional ceasefire already in March this year. We are at the end of October, and actually what we see, Russia has constantly refused to have even ceasefire. And every time they talk about that, they say that, we cannot have ceasefire because we haven't tackled yet the root causes of this war. But their root cause, understanding of root causes is completely different than Ukrainians or ours. So there are no preconditions for any kind of negotiations that could lead us to a just and lasting peace. And I think that the only way what can really push Russians to accept that their aggression is not going to succeed or accept negotiations is that Ukraine will prevail on a battlefield.
Yeah. And look, I have absolutely no hesitation in agreeing with you that you absolutely cannot trust Moscow on these questions, and the proposition that Putin is actually seeking peace in some form it just seems ludicrous to me. Then, what do you make of Donald Trump's position for most of the last 9 months, 10 months or so that he's been in power, that is actually the case?
I think that general desire to achieve peace is something what is very welcome, actually. Obviously, I think Ukrainians are the first ones who would like to see peace coming as soon as possible, because it's really terrible. If we think that the war is going on right now, nearly 4 years already, full-scale war, which includes also massive air attacks all across Ukraine, not only on front lines. And tens or even hundreds of thousands of people have perished in that war. But again, if President of the United States says that this war can be finished by, simple deal making or within 24 hours, we all know that, it's now White House has realized that this is not the case, and this conflict of war is much more, has a much higher magnitude rather than even, wars or conflicts he has managed to somehow stop or to reach some deals or peace. But here is it's not only about Ukraine. This is also about America. Russians are not after, again, as I said, Ukraine, but also to derail leadership of the United States in the world arena. And I don't know does Mr. Trump understands that or not, but if he thinks that he can run away from this war will catch him up sooner or later. And this is why I think what has happened recently during a NATO summit in The Hague, where NATO allies actually have pledged significant amounts of money to defense expenditures, and not only because of Trump's pressure, but realizing that we have significant gaps and deficiencies in our capabilities, and realizing how serious a threat is actually posed by Russia. And that has helped us to, let's say, to handle sensitivities, what we have in our relations, but everybody in Europe, I understand in Australia the same way, I understand that we have to stick together. We should make this not happen that Russia or China, what is their aim? Their aim is to divide us, Europeans, Americans, or Europeans, Australians and others, and compartmentalize our kind of issues and regionalize our sort of approach. And this is why transatlantic alliance is absolutely key factor to bring this war to the end as well, because unity matters, and that is really what Russia understands as well: strength and unity and readiness to fight for freedom.
Yeah, and I certainly hope that the relatively good terms of the transatlantic relationship, as they are now, continue. I sometimes wish that MAGA was renamed, well, Make America Great Again in the short term, because to me it is overwhelmingly obvious that it's in US interests for there to be a democratizing, rule-abiding world. That prioritizing sort of short-term national interests over longer-term contributions to a world in which there are more democracies and more countries abide by international rules and norms, clearly in US interests. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
And I think that true transatlantic alliance members like Estonia and other like-minded countries, we work tirelessly to keep alliance strong and sound, and also work with our colleagues across the bond to make it stronger and very much visible for our enemies as well. But deterrence is something which is critically important today than perhaps ever before. But we have to realize that Russia is not fighting their fight also only conventionally. Very modern word, hybrid warfare, what I personally don't like, but because this is basically tells you that this is not something serious, this is some, perhaps separated cases somewhere. But we have to be very blunt here. Russia is carrying out shadow war at us, and interfering in our internal lives and electoral processes, and using social media and all these kind of different bubbles. Fight for hearts and minds today is critically important, and that is why we, who really stand strong on democratic values and understand how important it is for democracies to stick together, we have to share best practices, how to fight back, how to not really kind of describe what is happening, but be proactive and help each other in that fight.
So you prefer the term shadow war?
Yes, of course.
Right. Oh, well,
but this is exactly what is going on.
Let's see if we can make that catch on. So you've referenced Estonia, your membership of NATO. In the course of my research for this, I came across the phrase "never alone again," which is Estonia's motto about alliances. I gather it goes back to the former foreign minister and president Lennart Meri. Explain what that means for Estonia. I mean, obviously it kind of speaks for itself, but just explain how that has sort of infused the Estonian political attitudes and the Estonian attitudes towards Europe.
That brings us back to World War II, because prior World War II, Estonia was a neutral country. And we hope that neutrality pays off, that a small nation as we are, we can survive if world goes crazy. Unfortunately, that was miscalculation. We weren't able to form alliance in the Baltic, Nordic area in the 1930s. And Soviets obviously used that. So we lost during World War II 25% of our population, both killed by Soviets or deported to Siberia, or people who were pushed to emigration. And we are very happy that Australia was one of those countries who welcomed our refugees in 1940s and 50s. So when we regained our independence in 1991, that was immediately clear to everybody, including, you mentioned our late president Lennart Meri, who said that, yes, we have to do now and forever everything that we will never be alone again. So this is our mantra, and this is very much shared not only among politicians, never mind are they in coalition or in opposition, but also in general in society, because we understand that while Russia hasn't changed and their imperial push is there and the threat is existential to us, we have to stick to that very idea that, yes, we do everything what it should be done by our nation. We spend a lot to defense. Next year alone, we go up to 5% of GDP only for military expenditures or defense expenditures. At least for next 10 years or so, we keep that level. But we understand that we can put even 100% of GDP for our defense, but that doesn't help to deter the possible threat. So we have to have every single moment reliable allies, partners, and this is why our membership in NATO since 2004 is a key element, obviously, of deterring threats from our borders. And we invest a lot into multilateral organizations, diplomacy. This is why my delegation is today here in Australia as well, seeking the more deeper cooperation between our countries. And this is what has helped our internal debates when it comes to foreign policy and security policy to be very much consensus-based. And we are very happy about that in Estonia we can really have a very strong focus on what we should do internationally.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I really hope that point is heard, listened to, picked up by our listeners and elsewhere, because I mean, if I look at Estonia, you have a neighbour to your east that is 100 times the size of you in terms of population, more than 100 times, I think, with, as you say, a history of imperialism. This idea that is occasionally swallowed by people in the West, thankfully it's not a common view in Australia, but this idea that NATO expansion up to Russia's borders was somehow a provocation absolutely does my head in. And if I look at a country like Estonia and look at it from your perspective, what on earth else were you supposed to do other than to start the process to signing up to NATO and EU the moment that you were liberated from Soviet rule? So
absolutely, and this is the only way. How do we see how can Russian imperialism be kept at bay?
Yep.
This is why important also to envision that there is only security guarantee for Ukraine available in this world, and that is NATO membership. And those who are trying to explain that Russia, and obviously Russians, this is Russian narrative, that they had to do something because NATO enlarged or broke a promise what was given, which is complete lie again. But this is why our tragic history tells us that in order to survive next to Russia, we have to have alliance who keeps them within their own borders. And we are very happy, actually. Yes, we have eastern neighbour who is hostile, but we are very happy to have enormously successful neighbours all around in Scandinavia, Nordic countries, in the Baltic countries. This is the closest kinship and neighbor and alliance or regional alliance you can see, probably nowhere else than in our part of the world. And now when Sweden and Finland are members of NATO, then this is a unique moment for all of us to actually do everything possible to keep stability in our region. And this is why Estonia, a small nation, but we are very dynamic in development. During last 30 years, we have become first digital nation in the world. There is a very strong startup mentality within society, the catch-up mentality, let's say, and we have more than 10 unicorns already. The highest per capita in the world tells you that nevertheless we have this strategic location at the same time has given us also this kind of dynamism within society, which pushes us to be more and more successful.
Wow, 10 unicorns in a country of, is it 1.3 million people?
Yes.
That's pretty remarkable.
It is.
And on that note, we're looking forward to hosting your Foreign Minister, Marko as for our Sydney Dialogue, our tech conference. So it was very appropriate to have Estonia, given how you're familiar with the phrase punch above your weight, very much punches above its weight in tech terms. But look, Marko, that's been a fantastic chat. I'm going to wrap it there, but thanks for coming on Stop the World.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Stop the World. We'll be back with another episode next week.